Thanks very much, and first of all I want to welcome you all here. I think we as politicians are good at giving out or highlighting things at times, but I think a few things has to be acknowledged. That in the line of the organic scheme, I think that when you roll up your sleeves and put the work in, and I've seen Jack Nolan at 12 o'clock at night in town halls, and it showed in the number of people that if you bring the information to farmers, it's ferociously important. And all such of I call it the single farm payment section or the basic payment, whatever you want to call it. In fairness, over the last few months, you've put out to everyone the areas that they have covered for the eco scheme next year, which is a huge help. Like, you're fairly well ahead of yourselves that way. And it's good to see that 99% of the payments are out there at the moment. And I will say, like, in the line of, mightn't agree with all the parts of it, but like Pat or Jack or Fran Morrison or Peter or Paul Dillon, anytime we ring them, in fairness, I want to commend them. You know, that's, you know, we're good at giving out, but I think that when something is done fairly right, it needs to be acknowledged as well. In relation, and I'm going to go through the different bits, so whichever one of you wants to go through the pieces. There was a piece of the Farming for Nature, the piece said on the eco scheme, where I think on mountains it showed up that there was, even though it should be fairly eco-friendly area, that there was a lack of drains or bushes or trees or whatever you want to call it. Is that getting fixed? Because I think it's down to, is it 2% or 3% of all farmers have at least, that 97% have nearly one measure, I think. So just to bring me up to speed on that. The forgotten farmer, I don't know which you'll be dealing with that. I saw the proposals that came out up to now, and I could, even the guys that were back early on, there was like 6 different things in it, and they might fit into 5, but they were caught in one. I couldn't get anyone that could fit into it. Are ye tweaking that? In the line of the organic, Jack, there's 2,000 or over 2,000 people. First of all, do you know, there's talk that about budgets and that. I presume that all of those people will be accepted, providing their plans are okay. Could you comment on that? In the line of the acres, Pat, and thanks for answering queries on numerous occasions. There is 18 or 16 or 18,000 more than what's there. I think it's the department, and I know that it will be in getting everyone in. It's extra work, but I think it's imperative that the funds are there to make sure that all those farmers are looked after. But one thing, and I've spoke about this before, on the acres that has cropped up on numerous occasions, and on your, Mary, when you were speaking, you mentioned about working with the national parks. There's a huge problem on SACs where, if I wasn't on an SAC, we'll say I could fence off an area for riparian zone up to 2 hectares, which got you 3,000. If I'm designated, because you cannot put down this fence, you're caught that you couldn't get that money. That has cropped up on several places. And I'm not talking about mountains, I'm talking about lowland right around the country. I've actually sent an email around to the national parks yourselves and a few more to see. I'm not talking, it won't be solved now, this minute, but when Acres 2 opens, we need to make sure that that's resolved. And on top of that, we are getting it, and I'm sure every other deputy will say the same. Like, there's breeding waders and there's swans and there's every type of a bird coming up in places that there was never a bird seen in their life. And whoever has done that for the department, I don't know where they're dreaming or what they were at, but like, we have proof from areas. I've talked to people in Mullingar, I've talked to people in Tipperary. Like, even I see my own area, there's breeding waders. Jesus, I don't know where they are. Like, okay, we had cranes years ago up and down the river, but like, someone needs to, some of this is, in my opinion, is anecdotal evidence, and you need not a company that has a vested interest looking at these surveys. But the National Parks needs to be able to back them up, and I think Andy Bleasdale needs to be able to come out and show us where these figures are standing up. I'm not blaming the Department of Agriculture, because they can only go by the information that's given to them, and all you can go by is the legislation that's in front of you. But in relation to fencing in the designated areas, tweaking has to be done before the next acres, because it's making it virtually impossible for those farmers. So you might comment on that. In relation to the young farmer scheme, you might just touch on it that I think you're going next year to 50 hectares of it, and you might just bring us up to date on that. In relation to the BDGP and the BEEP, I think that there's, you know, for CAP, in fairness to you, you went round the country, and for organics, and in fairness, some of your people in local areas for acres went round, and because the information, there's a lot of stuff out there, there's a lot of different monies to draw down, and it's very important that the information is getting to the farmer and that they understand it. And I would encourage you, even, you know, over the next few months, even before they fill the CAP payment, and I know that you've done Tuam in different areas around the country, I think it's ferociously important to keep the momentum you have up of bringing this information out to areas to help farmers, because we even meet them and they say, geez, I didn't know that, and the more information that's given, the better they understand it. I think that's ferociously important. And in the line of the TAMs, I welcome, you mentioned equine as well there, Mary. Do you have to have a herd number, or is it just an equine number to get TAMs for the people that might be in the equine side of things? In relation to TB, first of all, thanks for your presentation. Under this new proposal that's coming on the TB, it's the cattle over 36 months, I think I'm right in saying, that you're talking about needs the extra testing. Is the other part of testing down, is it coming, or is it down the road, or is it gone? Because like, farmers don't want to be hearing sort of drip-fed stuff coming today, and then next year we'll announce another bit, 24 months, and then 12 months. Like, is this it for how long? That's basically what I want to know. On top of that, I don't think that for farmers that get their cattle get TB, there's a situation where if you are working, and if you look at most farmers across the country, the job is like two legs of a stool. The job on the bit of farming keeps them sustainable in a rural area. But if they're working, when the TB, when the hardship money comes up, they don't get it. Which is, you know, there is much, like, because there is much entitled. The hardship, the job might be feeding the house, but the hardship money is for the cattle. Do you know what I mean? And I just can't understand why that hasn't been addressed. And could you explain to me, you're talking about that you can move your test forward. How long can you move it forward? Say, a farmer, they're saying that if you were testing in April or May, that you can move it forward. Is that 6 months forward or backwards, whichever you want, the way it won't cost you any extra money? How far is the flexibility on that? So I leave it at that and let the others answer after me.
Well, okay. Deputy Fitzmaurice has asked numerous questions of various panel members, so I'll let you, whoever wants to go first. We'll start with yourself, Ms. Fanning, on the TB, or Mr. Barrett, whichever wants to take TB. I'll go to Jack and the organic, whoever wants to take.
Thank you, Carla. I'll let my colleague Damien Barrett answer your first and third question, if that's okay, and Conor will speak on the hardship, if that's okay.
Mr. Barrett.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Fitzmaurice. The question there about what we're talking about here at the moment is phase one of this. This was a regulation brought in through the Animal Health Law, and this regulation, the original proposal was that it would be a 30-day test, and we successfully increased that to a 6-month test. So the herd test, in effect, will last for 6 months. In implementing this, we're implementing this on a phased basis, and it will apply in the first instance for bulls over 36 months of age and all adult cows. We don't have plans as such to introduce...
Just one second, sorry for interrupting, but I think these are cows in it under 36 months that's in calf.
24 months, yeah.
It's animals that have calved.
All right. Okay. So pregnant animals aren't in it? Okay.
No, a cow is defined once she calves.
Okay,
So
that's all right.
pregnant heifer doesn't apply too. We don't as yet have plans to put phase 2 in action, because we want to see how phase one how it works out. In relation to moving the test forwards or backwards, if a farmer wishes to, we have there are no limits as to bringing the test forward. We're going to allow people to give them a dispensation on a once-off basis to push it back by up to 3 months. So,
Okay.
thank you.
So Manny?
Just in relation to the hardship grant, Civic Deputy, under the TB forum there's a number of subgroups, one of which is the financial working group under the chairmanship of Jerry Kiley, and that was tasked with developing a sustainable funding model. Excuse me. And within that we are looking at the existing compensation schemes, the income supplement, the depopulation grant and the hardship grant. So the specific issue that you raise in relation to off-farm income is one of the topics that is being discussed. Well, there hasn't been full agreement on these yet, so we've made a lot of progress and we're close to it.
What I'm saying is, if the people behind you, their schemes are kicking in January, yours isn't kicking in that quick, is it? When is this TB thing?
So in terms of the financial element, as soon as that is agreed,
okay,
it would kick in. So there's no closing or opening or closing date. So those discussions are still ongoing. So I don't want to kind of talk, but it is one of the issues that has been discussed.
Okay. On the various schemes, Jack.
Thanks, Deputy. So we have approximately 2,100 applications, which is a doubling of what we had. So we have 4,000 now, hopefully from the start of next year. And we're going through them at the minute, looking at the areas and looking at the budget, and we'll be able to write to people hopefully in springtime to say whether they're in or not. In the past, they wouldn't have received any notification till later on in the year, but we'll tell them early in the spring because they have to change their practice. And we're aiming to bring in everybody we can. I don't know right now because we don't know the areas, but the scheme will be open again as planned at the end of next year, and it'll open every year because there's a huge appetite there, like Deputy Fitzmaurice said when we went around the country. A lot of people are interested, and we hope we were going to keep, maybe not doubling next year, we doubled this year, but we're definitely going to go up by 1,000 or more every year for the next couple of years.
Okay, the various schemes, Ms. Carey.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Deputy, for the very positive comments. It's very much appreciated. And we do intend to continue with our communications and engaging with farmers next year. That'll be commencing and ramping up in January. And then we'll have the clinics that we go out in the spring as well to help farmers to submit their applications. So now I might pass over to Fran on the forgotten farmers and on the young farmers.
Okay, thanks, Deputy. If it's okay, through the Chair, I'll deal with forgotten first and then move on then to the Young Farmer Scheme afterwards. Right. So the proposals that you would have heard Minister announce back at the MOCRA conference a couple of weeks ago now down in Ballykistine, they're the proposals. They're not finalised yet, and so they're not the ones that you've seen and you've referred to are not fully developed yet. So we're still working through those at the moment. The design of those, what you've seen so far, is really around identifying those people who are truly forgotten, the ones who would have ordinarily been there to receive money back, when the downturn happened, and to make sure that the money is concentrated at those people who didn't have something to apply for then and normally would have.
Just to bear in mind that some of those people that forgot or lost out early on in the original in 000102, when they were getting nothing, they were left high and dry that some of them had to go working and they wouldn't have got the opportunity to do the green search, you understand me? And I think that I've looked at a lot of them so far, and there's one or two things in every one of them that's catching them. And I think we need to be flexible. That's the one thing I would say for those. And I know, I think that we might talk about it here if the chair lets us down in the, which he possibly will. Would we be allowed to put in our submission to it from this committee, like T, about it?
Absolutely, sure. Any suggestions, commentary, more than welcome to do so, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I think then if I have your question on the Young Farmer Scheme correctly, it's to give you an update on what's happening next year in particular. Okay, so the Young Farmer Scheme at the moment is support particularly targeted at farmers under 40 who are starting their farming enterprise. At the moment, they would receive a benefit of €68 as a payment per entitlement held. That's what they've received all the way up along from in the current CAP programme up to this year. That changes next year to a benefit per hectare, so it's a per hectare payment, and also a higher amount of money, a higher proportion of the overall direct payments budget of some 35 million per year. We estimate that we will those young farmers applying from next year onwards will receive somewhere around 175, an average of €175 per hectare declared on their BIS application, and that's subject to a maximum of 50 of those. In total, that means that over a course of 5 years, if a young farmer could draw down the maximum benefit over those 5 years, essentially a start-up grant over 5 years of about €40,000.
And will women in farming get that as well? Could you bring us in on the women in farming as well?
It's open to all young farmers. There's no
But women in
discrimination.
farm that are older, I think there's some new thing is there for coming in. My understanding is that they can make an application, can they?
So the Young Farmer Scheme is absolutely limited to farmers who are no more than 40 in the first year of application. So regardless of gender, it is young farmers only. That's laid down, hard-coded in the legislation, in the regulations.
Farmers that say have 2 years gone, can they switch? They'll get the automatic top-up.
So existing applicants, so say take a young farmer who first joined the scheme in 2021, they would have got €68 per entitlement in 21, €68 per entitlement in 22, and in 23, if they continue on and apply next year, they would receive the higher rate per hectare declared. So in commission speak, to say the old people get paid the new money, so they can continue on for the rest of their 5 years in the new scheme.
Okay, sorry for that, thank you. Was there any other question?
There is, yeah.
Acres, and I was on BDGP, and I was on, and if you could elaborate on the women in farming, if you have information on it as well.
Yeah, I think the women in farming is probably the higher grant rate that's been provided under TAMS. So I might actually pass to Josephine to answer the TAMS question on the equine, and Josephine will also take one of the acres questions, and then Pat will take the other two.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. In relation to the acres question, as you're aware, the scheme has been oversubscribed, so it was designed to take participants in on a tranche basis, so on a phase basis. So it was designed to take 30,000 in the first tranche. It's oversubscribed by about 16,000. So I suppose the question as to whether we can take everybody in, that's a policy question, and it's not one I can answer here tonight, but just to say that there are a number of challenges if we take everybody into the scheme, and I suppose the budget is just one of those challenges, but it is something that's been looked at and reflected on. Yeah, I can take the TAMS question now as well in relation to equine. So the proposed minimum eligibility criteria for equine investments would include that a participant would have to have a BIS application and a minimum of 5 hectares. Okay.
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, so I suppose to address the first question, the riparian buffer zone on designated lands, I suppose just a background to it. So to get the CAP strategic plan approved, part of the process was carrying out a strategic environmental assessment. As part of that assessment, we had to give a commitment that any of the actions and interventions in our CAP strategic plan wouldn't have any detrimental or potentially negative effects on our designated sites and important habitats. So riparian buffer zones on grassland involves permanent fencing. So on many of these designated sites, fencing is an action that would require prior consent. Now, just the way the scheme is designed, we have a short window for applications. As you saw, 46,000 applications come in. So we wouldn't be able to deal with those individual requests to get prior consent on fencing in these designated sites. So as a precautionary action, we had to block those actions. So unfortunately, it was an operation.
I'm not saying, you know, don't take me up that I'm living in the department. I'm well familiar with the designation and the consent that you're on about. And the problem is that you have to, it's the national parks that needs to come to the table here to facilitate those farmers, because you have to go by the rules or regs that's in front of you. I understand that fully, but there is a problem on that the national parks will have to address.
Thank you, Deputy. Just maybe moving on to the second question regarding to breeding waders and geese and swans and the hotspot maps which we would have used. So you're correct in saying they're the maps that were available to us at the resolution, and so I suppose initially the Irish Heritage Council would have instigated a project to get these hotspot maps. So a contract was awarded, I think, back a few years ago, pulling all the data together. So there's a lot of data of where these sites may be and from different sources, and it was about pulling them all together and producing a hotspot map. So those hotspot maps were provided to us at a certain resolution, which we use for the scheme. But I think it's important to note also, if you had land within the breeding waders and geese and swans, it was an advantage for a lot of people because they were able to get tier 1 access to the general scheme. And there was no action that was compulsory because you were in these areas. So we have a geese and swans action, and it was voluntary uptake of that. Those actions in the breeding waders that can get you tier 1, and they were again voluntary. However, on the breeding waders, again, as part of that SEA, we had to block certain actions that might be damaging to the nesting birds. So tree planting and hedgerow planting would have been.
Yeah, but whoever came up with that about like breeding birds, a lot of them use trees to nest, do you know what I mean? Some of them. And this idea of blocking, like, and I've talked to people that would be from, look, I've talked to some people in the national parks even about this. It's absolutely sort of flying in the face of what it's about in breeding to stop them from sowing hedgerow. And I'm not, this is what's in front of you, and this is why I'm saying those two things needs to be teased out for phase 2, in my opinion.
Okay.